how do I? Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to all of you. We are told that this is based upon a true story. I found myself when I viewed the film, certainly for the first time, I had to go back and I was a little bit thrown off by the date. And I thought maybe I had it wrong. 1996.
96, 97.
Yeah, and I said, well, no, I may have had the last two numbers transposed because I'm thinking 96, that's like 30 years after the March on Washington. That's 30-some years after the Civil Rights Act, 30-some years after the Voting Act, 30-some years after so many things. What made you decide to tell this story today?
So I didn't decide to tell the story today. I actually decided to tell the story in 1997.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
okay.
It worked out that it's being released today. As I like to say, when I read a blurb in a small local newspaper called The State saying in 1996 that Redneck Shop and KKK Museum opens in small southern town. And I just couldn't believe it in 1996. So I took that clipping and I put it in my folder of things I wanted to get back to.
Right.
I hadn't gotten back to it yet because in 1997, another article came out in a larger paper that said, Klansman sells Redneck Shop and KKK Museum to Black Baptist minister. And when I read that, I picked up the phone and I actually called the Reverend David Kennedy and I said, look, this is an unbelievable story. I'd like to come down there and check it out. He said, well, it's a free country, come on down. So I drove down from New York, and at that point I was living in New York and I was single and I had no kids and I had a lot of black flowing hair.
Yeah. I had more hair at that time too.
Yeah. So cut to now where I'm living in LA, I'm married, I have 3 kids. My oldest just learned how to drive, and I've got a lot of salt and pepper hair. Okay. But truthfully, I was just floored by the story.
Right.
And I just couldn't believe that in 1996, 97, that this could still go on. And I just was compelled to write it. And after I got to know the people, I was even more compelled. I thought this story means so much. I mean, these 3 people, and it's more than that. Mike Burden, Judy Burden, the Reverend Kennedy, Clarence, whose real name is Clarence Simpson, and the congregation did something tremendous back then. They're heroes.
Let me just mention as a side, I think I've mentioned this beforehand. It took me a little while. I was trying to figure out what was the significance of the title, Burden. What was the significance? I'm trying to figure it out. And then I think after seeing it at least once, I found out that was the name of Mike. That was Michael's last name.
His name.
So that was very simple, huh?
His name is Mike Burden, which is crazy. But we had a working title called Cross to Bear. And in 1999, I was sitting there and my buddy who was going to play Mike Burden at that time, who now could play Mike Burden's dad, he said, I like one-word titles. I just like one-word titles. Like, think of a one-word title. And we're sitting there, and I went, Burden. His last name is Burden. The whole movie is about getting over this burden. So we came up with the title Burden, and it's stuck ever since. In fact, it was such a troubled movie that at one point we wanted to name it Unburdened.
Okay, so you kind of came in contact with the story as such in 96, 97, and decided then you wanted to tell it. So is it a story that has some significance in the year 2020? Do you think this is really a story that needs to be seen and connected with in 2020? I mean, aren't we far removed from 1997 as we are removed from 1960?
You know, what I like to say about this movie is this movie's not political. I mean, I didn't write it in response to anything. You know, this isn't a response to the present day, unfortunately. And I mean that because, you know, this is just it's a very simple story, very hard to do. The simple story is, you know, love over hate. You know, as was said at the beginning, and I use this quote all the time, you can never turn an enemy into a friend through hate. You can only turn an enemy into a friend through love. Mm-hmm. It's a movie about, you know, that simple. I mean, it's just, but it's impossible to do. I mean, you know, I don't get along with my neighbor. I'm going to be honest. And I watch this movie and I go, how can I make this movie and not get along with my neighbor? You know, and then I walked over and talked to them and we got along. And it was like, that's all you have to do is just open your ears and open your eyes. Right. And that's what the movie's about. You know, you know, in response to that, when 2008 happened, and I have to be honest, I got a lot of condolence calls for Burden. Too bad about Burden. Obama's like, it's over. Obama's elected. It's over. The movie's over. The movie has no meaning anymore. Right. It's over. And I went, boy, I hope so.
But as simple as it is, it's a story, it seems, about some very, very complex issues. It's a story that has at its core racism.
A little bit.
And I recall talking about time. It was even the Catholic bishops in the 70s who came out and said and affirmed that racism is a sin. And it's not just one sin of many. It's a grave evil. And so we're talking about this very, very serious issue. And yes, we can say it's about good and bad and, you know, good and evil. But it's about something very, very complex, some very complex issues. And these are still issues that you think are worthy of being told in or discussed in 2020. And I'm not talking about in a political sense per se.
No, more than ever. I mean, what you just said, so forgive me, I'm not a big good and evil guy. I think if you're going to make a movie about good and evil, you throw some capes on them, throw some masks on them, and send them up into space. This is a movie about people. That's why it's complicated. Because what I try to do is I try to take the mask off the Klansman. And lo and behold, there's a person under there. As much as you think that they're misguided, as much as they're they're indoctrinated, I always like to say that these vulnerable people are hijacked by hate. Mm. You know, Mike Burden wasn't a man of privilege. Mike Burden comes from the worst background you can possibly imagine. I've spent a lot of time with this poor guy. And I mean poor guy. I mean, he comes from a severely broken home where he was severely brutalized as a child. He escaped it by going into the military. He got out with nowhere to turn. He was taken in by this man who showed him a family. And I'm careful with that word. Mm-hmm. It looks like family, it smells like family, it tastes like family, but it's a family built on hate, so it's not a real family. And then all of a sudden he got the opportunity to see a family built on love. Right. And a family built on hate is only skin deep, but a family built on love goes all the way to the heart. And it's harder. It's easy to go blame, blame, name call, blame, blame. That's all we're doing today. Yeah. We're not bothering to listen. We're not bothering to learn. We're just comfortable calling people names. That makes us feel better.
But apart from what he may have inherited, I think there was a part where the Reverend speaks to him about assuming responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that nothing can change. Nothing can change in you until you first accept some responsibility for that. And so I think that, was there not a point when that clicked, that kind of made sense to him, and he began to assume some responsibility?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, I didn't try to make it easy for the characters in the movie. Having spent months down there researching, I realized it's not easy for the real people. So I didn't make it easy for the characters, which doesn't make it easy for the audience. Mm. And there's a lot of fits and starts on his journey to get to where he needs to get to. But yes, until he can actually sit there, and it's in the woods, and realize I need I need to come clean. I need to redeem myself. I need to say what I've done. I need to admit what I've done so I can repent for my sins.
Right, right.
And that's what the Reverend tells him in so eloquently in that story about being, the dog. And he realizes that he needs to admit what he's done to free himself. And it's what we all need to do.
So that's also a 2020 kind of lesson, and
that's 2020. That's 2020. That's 1996. That's 1967. That's 1900. That's 1500. That's year one. I mean, I think that we're people.
Yeah.
And we all do. We don't mean to do bad things. No one wakes up. No one wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror, and goes, "I'm going to do some bad stuff today." But we make mistakes.
We wonder that sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But we make mistakes,
Yeah.
and until we're able to take responsibility for our actions, admit what we've done, we can't progress.
Yeah. Before we move to some questions from our guests here, I just want to, before viewing this film, some very, very well-intentioned people were cautioning me, and they said, the language is going to be very, very strong. It's going to be very strong. And I'm trying to think to myself, now, what kind of things are they saying that are things that I have not heard before? Unless it was something that Snoop said recently. I don't know how strong it can be, how different. But nonetheless, how necessary, again, we're talking about based upon a true story, how necessary was the language that was used in the telling of the story?
It
could have been told differently.
Yeah,
using different language.
For sure. Look, there's a. I'll get to it. When we first screened the movie, there's a Christian organization called the Windrider Forum at Sundance, and I was at Sundance, and it was a whirlwind of craziness, and something that's really you look forward to. And I kept having this organization.
And congratulations at Sundance for the award. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. But in the middle of all this Windrider Forum, they just kept nagging, and could you speak to us, and would you speak to us? And I kept saying, I don't even know who you people are. And we walked into the room, we finally said yes, and we walked in the room, and there were 350 Christians. I was amazed, and this woman stood up, and she said, I'm an evangelical Christian, and I just want to say thank you so much. We're so tired of this faith-based film pandering crap that's being shoved down our throat. You finally made a movie that's Jesus' journey was not G-rated. And I went, and I think that we hit a nerve there, and I just think it's really important to tell, this is what's going on. I mean, it's not just the language. Sure. It's the violence, it's the vitriol, it's the clothes, it's, I wanted to make a movie that shows an environment that has been somewhat left behind. And Clarence Simpson, the character that Usher plays, I rode around with him quite a bit. And he's the one who actually said, and Forrest uses the line, but he's the one who actually said to me, he said, I feel sorry for them boys. And I couldn't believe it. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, poor, Southern, male, black, supposed to be. He said, poor Southern male, white, ain't supposed to be. I feel sorry for them boys. They got nothing. And they're treated worse than we are. The only thing they've got is that they think we're better than those people. And so he's the one who said all that to me. He's an African-American. He's now got a reverend of his own church. He's a great guy. And I thought to myself, man, there's so many factors at play here. People aren't born, they don't come out of the womb and say, I'm a racist. They're given or not given stuff. And a lot of it's economics, and a lot of it is about self-hatred. It's a lot about the way you feel about yourself, disenfranchisement, left behind. And that's what I learned down there. And then what else I learned down there is, again, is the message of the movie. Yeah, I mean, sure, is the Klan evil? Yeah, the Klan is evil, but again, they're people. How are we getting, your Klan, you're evil, you're a racist, you're an idiot, you're this, you're that. Great, where are we getting? Where are we going? Nowhere. We're going nowhere. We're going backwards. The only way to deal with this is to actually sit down and try to, Mike Burden said it to me yesterday. I spoke to him, I speak to him quite a bit. And he was doing an interview. He said, I just kept telling people to see the movie because the movie tells the stories and not my story I'm proud of. You go see that movie and man, you can really open your eyes. And I was like, thanks, Mike. That means a lot. He goes, yeah, people should see this movie.
How was it directing Mr. Forrest Whitaker and Usher in the telling of this story?
So what's funny is after, 15, 16 years of having written the screenplay and having it get greenlit and then fall apart and greenlit and fall apart, you tend to get numb to what the story's about. You tend to get numb with the language. Mm-hmm. And so we all get down there and someone says, says nigger for the first time in rehearsal. And everybody sort of stopped. And one African-American extra on the set started crying. He was older. And I realized, man, this word is so toxically powerful when used in this context. And I had to be very careful with my actors. Mm-hmm. Usher, honestly, Usher, God bless the guy, he took this very seriously. I had to meet with him 3 or 4 times before he would sign on to the project. He wanted to make sure my heart was in the right place. He wanted to make sure that the movie had enough meaning, because it's not a big budget movie, for him to join in, and he did. And when he showed up to set, that guy was so prepared. He came to play. Mm-hmm. Of course, the wig, that was fun, putting the wig on him. He kept going, can't I just not wear the wig? I'm like, you gotta sort of wear the wig. I don't want you to look like Usher. He put on a lot of weight. And he was amazing. Just very giving. And Forrest, everybody sort of, as a director, and especially a first-time director doesn't know what they're doing at all, it's more of a psychiatrist than you are a director. Everybody works so differently as actors. And I was an actor, so I think that was very, very helpful in directing. Because, Forrest comes in character and he stays in character the whole way through. So his cadence was very slow, and you would talk to him. He's very thoughtful as a person in general. Forrest is actually, I believe that Forrest is going to be sainted. He does so much work above and beyond his acting, but his acting really tells a lot. But he does a lot of humanitarian work. He's a really beautiful guy. There were moments, though, where he was not so loving to me. But having my first shot to direct at the age of 50, and with kids, it takes a lot of the bite out of it. I wasn't a 25-year-old. And the first day, the first shot, the first moment of his existence on the movie, he had a long time putting on his wig for the first day, because it's nerve-wracking when you put on, makeup and stuff and have to go on and film. And if it looks stupid, the whole movie falls apart for his character. So he finally, I'm like, it's an independent movie and we're taking forever and everybody's saying we're not going to get any shots. So I said, listen, let's do the far shot. Let's turn the camera around. Let's do the 3 kids coming this way. And Forrest waves to them, so I'll just wave to them and get their reaction, and that's it. And it's 50 yards away. Who cares? Let's just shoot it. We do that, and Forrest shows up, and everybody tells me Forrest is really upset. You shot without him in a scene that he's in. And people were freaking out on me. This is bad. This is super bad. Forrest, this is bad. So I thought to myself, what's so bad about this? So I walked up to him and I go, hey, my fault. I heard you wanted to be there. I take all responsibility for this. It was 50 yards away. I can almost guarantee you that nothing would have changed had it been you or me waving. He goes, you don't know that. I said, you're right, and I won't do it to you again. But we needed to get moving today, and that's my fault. Mm-hmm. And he went, all right then. Okay. And everything was fine. Okay.
Let's turn to some of the audience. How are we going to do this?
Not microphone over there.
No, you just want to speak? I can hear.
No, here it is. Okay, step up to the mic then, please.
Oh.
Good evening, Mr. Heckler, Brother Davis.
Call me Andrew, please.
Andrew.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Carolyn Harrison, Good Light Productions. First, I want to say thank you for the timing of the screening, to honor history, that's stories that still need to be told over and over again. I'm also humbled by the love story that it is. As I think about all the different kinds of love, not eros, not story, none of those. This is about the love that is stronger than death. And I appreciate the years that it took for it to come to this position, to this place, to this audience. My question to you is, how do we get more stories like this to be told?
I'm going to give you a really straight answer. Get everybody to see the movie so it makes money. Because if it doesn't make money, no one cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the truth. I can't tell you another answer. That's the only answer. I wrote another movie that's, I call my next film, it makes this look like a romantic comedy. It is tough. It is real. I spent weeks and weeks in southern West Virginia, the Kentucky border. It is brutal. And no one wants to make it because other movies like it didn't make any money.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you very much. Next.
Hi, I'm Tanisha Gary. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
I have two quick questions. One, what happened to the property between 97 and 2017? Because it said at the end they actually took ownership, so that's 20 years in between. And then the second question is, how did you find Crystal Fox? She's an up-and-coming actor. She's brilliant. Those are my two questions.
So I'll give you the quick answer for Crystal is easy. Robbie and I, my producer, who's wildly amazing. I mean, she is everything you need as a first-time filmmaker, anytime filmmaker making an independent movie. She's the best. She came on in 2004 and never let it go. Okay. She also did Dallas Buyers Club, which took her 15 years too. She is the best. But we're sitting there in a casting session, and her phone rings, and she picks it up. And she says to her assistant, "You're joking." And he goes, "No, I'm not joking." She goes, "Yeah, you are." And he goes, "Okay." And so she starts laughing at me. She goes, "Tyler Perry's on the phone." Yeah. And she goes, "Hi, what's up?" And she's waiting for the joke. And all of a sudden she goes, "Oh, well, Tyler, yeah, of course we'll see this actress." And she hangs up. And Tyler Perry called her on her cell phone to recommend Crystal Fox. Would we meet with her? Yeah. So we went down to Georgia. And when she showed up, we met with her. And I gave her the part literally on the spot.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. So the other thing is there's a little line in the movie that's not, it's not very well articulated, but it is, I have a lifetime lease on the property. So when Tom gives Mike the deed, he wrote in a stipulation that as long as he's alive, right, it's his property.
And upon his death,
and upon his death, it transferred. So he died just not too long ago.
2017.
2017.
Okay. And that's all.
And that's when it transferred over. And now the studio, we're all doing this idea now to raise money. At the end of the movie, there's hashtag rehab hate. I wish I was better at social media. And it's, we're raising money with Lowe's and a couple of other people. We're donating a lot of our screening stuff to rehabilitating that actual museum, the Redneck Shopping KKK Museum, into a center of tolerance and love.
It's just been dormant? The space is dormant for 20 years?
This is going on right now.
No, I'm saying, was the space dormant for 20 years?
Pretty much. Well, no, and not for 20 years. I mean, what's weird is we did a lot of research on it. Richard Spencer and the white nationalist movement and the Nazi movement ended up having a lot of meetings in the back of the space. The white supremacy sort of got all mishmashed up from the Klan to the Nazis, and there's actually a direct correlation, a direct line from the back of that shop in Lawrence, South Carolina, all the way to Charlottesville. So that was pretty frightening, because we think this story is sort of a little story in a little southern town that, okay, oh well. And then when I heard that, when they drew the line, I was like, oh, see, well, it's more than that. It always seems like it can be localized, but it can't. It's a really, hate is contagious.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Next person.
So this movie was inspired of real life events. What part were fabricated? Like, was the deer part sort of fabricated, or like towards the ending, I guess, or?
You know, the deer came from here. Yeah, I mean, what's real and what's not? You know, the story is the story. Mike Burden was a Klansman. They opened this shop with his boss. He fell in love with a single mom who knew he was in the Klan. She wasn't so hot on it. At a certain point when it started affecting her kids and her kid, right, she had enough and made him make a choice. He was on that roof. He was with the rifle. He was supposed to kill the Reverend. He just couldn't do it. The Reverend didn't react. Mm-hmm. And so that was the whole thing. And so, and then he got shut out of the Klan. And the majority of the movie is true. You know, the Reverend has more than one kid. Stuff like that is doctored. And, you know, as Clarence Simpson would like to say, I never was on welfare. What did you do to me? Mm-hmm. You know, and I like to tell him, I'm like, Clarence, it's a tribute to you. It's not you. It's a tribute.
In a recent Times Magazine article, you're quoted as saying, I knew this story would mean something to people. How did you know it would mean something, and what did you think it would mean?
You know, it's a good question. It actually goes back to, you know, a little bit of this, you know, in that. So if the story meant this much to me for 20 years, mm-hmm, you know, the other thing about, it's not just money, it's about having passion for something. If you're going to stick it out for 20 years, you better care about what you're telling. Right. You know, that's the other thing for filmmakers out there. But when I read the story, I just thought to myself, this is an amazing story. I mean, it's almost unbelievable, honestly. I mean, like, the unbelievable true story. Well, this is an unbelievable true story. That a Klansman who's not just a weekend warrior, but like a full-on Klansman who has the gumption to open up a KKK museum could eventually be taken, pulled out of that, sure, by the love of a woman and the faith of a Reverend, and then sell the thing to a Black Baptist church.
Called New Beginnings.
New Beginnings, you know, Baptist Church. Yeah. And so, Missionary Baptist Church. Mm-hmm. I get yeah. But it was so amazing to me that I just felt like, what a simple story. This could really affect change if we can tell it in the best possible way. Yeah. And you know, we're running out of time here, but and I would want to have asked you more about the role of the church, the Black church, in the telling of this story, the reality of the story, because I think in these stories being told, a central institution is the church. And I imagine that's not something you created. You didn't make the Reverend a Reverend for the moment of the story. That's the reality. You know, we're talking about throughout time, throughout the Civil Rights Movement, it was the church that was a preeminent institution in change, in confrontation, in the reality of it all. But let me move my question to this, though, and you can respond to any of it. Again, in that same article, you are quoted as saying, and you can say I didn't say this, there is a pathway for fighting hate. It's not easy. It's love, faith, and not giving up. What is that faith you're talking about? You know, I think it depends on the person. Okay. You know, I don't want to speak to any one denomination. I think that all religions, all faith, at their core, have the same message, mm-hmm, you know, which is do unto others as others would do unto you. Those are values. If we all live by them, this would be a much better place. Mm-hmm. In whosever God you believe in. You know, when you actually take the time to read, you know, the Bible, the Quran, the different, you know, texts, mm-hmm, these are common values we all should share. You know, so what does faith mean to me? Does it mean faith in men? I don't know. I think so. I think we have to have faith in each other. Does it mean faith in a God or a spirit? Absolutely. You know, I like to say about this movie, like I said, it's the romantic love of a woman, mm-hmm, is the honey, and the faith of the Reverend pulls him over. You know, and so I think the combination of that, but just sort of being aware that what you're doing to people, hurting them, is wrong. You know, and all we're doing now And, you know, right now for me, all we're doing is hurting each other. From traffic to bumping into someone on the street to not being nice to someone and not saying hello to someone. I mean, we're just hurting each other all the time. The stories of people helping each other are few and far between, and then they come out and you're like, whoa.
Sure.
But it's not easy to do. Like I said, I try to relate to everybody. Like I said, I don't get along with my neighbor. For what reason? I have no idea. Like, someone asked me, why don't you get along with your neighbor? I don't know. Renee or Brian are pretty nice people. I don't know why we don't get along. So I went over and I asked them, you know, and they told me.
And we'll hold that for another conversation, okay? You hold on to that. Well, you know, as we kind of wrap up our time together, I want to thank you. I thank you for having the perseverance to stick with the story and to tell it in as realistic, even at times realistically raw fashion as you could, for having the right talent involved in telling the story. Clearly, Forrest Whitaker and Usher and all the others were key. You could feel that they were telling a story from more than just the script. And I think that's critical in telling any story. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank them through you for that. I want to thank everyone who's here for being part of this coming together, this gathering. I always think this is a very, very special place, and was so pleased with the turnout for this film. You were surprised.
I was surprised.
You said on a President's Weekend.
On a President's Weekend, I wanted to, you know, first of all, I'd like to thank the Sheen Center for inviting us and having the movie. Without the support that we've received by so many organizations, you know, religious and also, you know, human organizations, this film wouldn't be getting the play it's getting. So I want to thank you guys for having us. I want to thank my mother for coming.
Hi, Mom. Yes.
She's never seen the film, so this is the first time she's seen it.
Did you caution her about the language?
I did not have to caution her about the language.
Okay, very good, very good.
And thank you very much for also taking your time to host this as well.
Well, I don't think many people know that it was supposed to be Oprah who was supposed to, but she found herself a little busy, and so they asked me at the last minute to step in for her. But
I'm good with that.
Okay, good. But you know, I do want to kind of emphasize how special I think this place is, where we can come together, and maybe this is a story also that we can come together in this space. It's a theater, and there are more than just a few people like around a dinner table, but there's an intimacy about us here gathered, and the diversity is real, but it adds something to our conversation and the story that we tell by our very presence. And in this place, we can tell stories that are real, even if the reality kind of takes us into places that are complex and maybe raw. And we don't have to worry about that we are now moving into the realm of the sacrilegious. That we can still be conscious of the fact that this space and the people who are gathered in it are sacred. And we can disagree about what we are talking about. We can recognize that the issues that we leave here with may be greater than the ones we thought we had when we came in here, but it's still, we can do that with a sense of the sacred. And I just want to thank you for being part of that. I want to thank the Sheen Center and the Archdiocese for being a part of that. I want to thank you for being here. I want to mention just in closing in terms of Black History Month, it was last year that some of us gathered in this space, and it was organized in collaboration with the Sheen Center by the OBM Divine Nine Committee, which of course are the 9 historically Black Greek letter organizations, fraternities and sororities. And some are here with us today. And we were seeing a movie last year called Emmanuel. And it was about the shootings, the killings at Emmanuel AME Church. And I say that to say that 2019, 2020, we have a lot of issues that we have to work at, we have to assume responsibility for, but it starts with this. It starts with this in many cases, our ability to come together and talk seriously about serious issues. So again, thank you all very, very much. Have a nice rest of the day, and hope to see you again in the Sheen Center.